Hi everybody, I'm Miss Joanie and I work at the Cumming branch of the Forsyth County Library. I'm coming to you today for the newest episode of Plot Twisters, which is a book talk for teens. One of my all-time favorite in the teen middle book category is by Neil Gaiman, who's one of my absolute favorite authors. This book is called The Graveyard Book, and in this story, Neil Gaiman just sucks you right in. A murderer comes and kills this young man who's only 18 months old, his whole family. By lucky chance, he manages to escape out of his crib and cross the road and go into the graveyard next door, where the Owenses, a nice old ghost couple that live in the graveyard, decide that they will take him in at the request of his recently deceased mother's ghost. So obviously this book is fantasy. It takes you through Nobody Owens, they call him Bod in the story. Neil Gaiman takes you through Bod's life and his education through the eyes of the ghosts in the graveyard who end up teaching him. Some of them are his playmates as he grows up. And of course, the whole time he has a killer that is still after him, trying to find him. This book kind of takes place in the graveyard basically the whole time, but also each chapter he grows a little bit older and a little bit older and a little bit older, so that by the end of the story, he's coming of age and ready to start his way out into the world and figure out how all of that is going to work. Neil Gaiman is a very skilled author. He's great at just bringing you into fantastical circumstances in a way that is unlike any other author I've ever read before. So if you get a chance, check out Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book. If you're not a big fan of chapter books, this book is also available in graphic novel format in 2 volumes. The next book I want to recommend, I don't have a physical copy of it, is called The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. It is her debut novel and it is realistic fiction. In this story, Star Carter, who is our main character and narrator, witnesses tragically, for the second time in her life, the death of her best friend. And his shooting, which is an officer-involved shooting, becomes the stuff of national headlines. Star is the only eyewitness. And so this story is the struggle of Star Carter. She goes to school in a prep school outside of her neighborhood. Her neighborhood is called Garden Heights. And so she's actually an African-American girl, and she goes to school with other kids of all races at her prep school, white, Asian, other African Americans, including her brother. But in her family life, she lives in this neighborhood of Garden Heights, which is known for notorious gang activity. So she's kind of living in these 2 worlds, and she has to come to terms with trying to switch between her prep school world and her home world. In the midst of all that, she has an uncle who is a police officer, so she feels a loyalty to him. And she's also just fiercely devoted to her own family and her friends. And the author just does a fantastic job of making you feel like you've really lived in someone else's shoes, and you feel like you can kind of understand. And I think today is a really good day for me to do this book talk with everything that's going on in our country right now. So if you want to step into that world, try The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And I am really excited because I just downloaded on audio her follow-up to this book called On the Come Up. And it's also narrated by Bonnie Turpin, who won an award for narrating this book, the Audie Award, and actually the Odyssey Award too. So she won 2 awards for her phenomenal voice talent. All right, guys, that's it for today. I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Plot Twisters. At FCPL, we know books.